What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of our Building Block series. Today, we're going to be talking about how loyalty is a value proposition and what building a winning culture looks like. We're going to talk about where we went wrong, what we did right, and try to keep it under 10 minutes. So, tune in. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of our Building Block series, which is part of Losing Season, the podcast about failure. Today, we're going to be talking about hiring your first set of people, what makes a great company great from a personnel perspective, and culture, which are things that we did a terrible job of at my last startup. And I had a bunch of notes on this. I had 10 pages of notes, and I started trying to do it, and it just felt performative, which we talked about in the last episode. And so I decided that I was just going to kind of give it a go from the top and just speak from the heart and try to keep this super digestible, around 10 minutes. There's going to be a lot of time in later episodes to dive into the nitty gritty on this. But yeah, we'll just hit the generalities. So for those of you who don't know, at one point we had nearly 50 people in our office, all working for us, and it was all just fake. None of it was real. And when I look back on that, I think that started at the very beginning. So I wanted to talk about the things that I learned from our failure, and then also the things that I learned from watching our friends and other people who were getting started around the same time as us build a really good, successful business. And I think one of the first things to talk about is culture. Everybody has all these really long, drawn out explanations for what culture is. And so did we, honestly, when we were running the business. But I think that the best definition of culture I've ever heard, and this isn't mine, this was told to me by a guy whose gym I used to go to, is that culture is simply what you allow to happen under your watch. So for a business owner, culture is just simply what you allow to happen in your business. And we allowed a lot of stuff to happen that was not acceptable, just up and down. And that just goes across the board. And that leads us right into the first point that I wanted to make about how to build a good workforce and a good company culture. And I think the first thing you have to do for your employees is create safety. And the thing that we did as far as creating safety, or we thought we were doing as far as creating safety, is we listened to everybody's emotions, and we were not data-based, which was very, very frustrating for me, especially considering that I wasn't super involved in the hiring process, which is my fault. I got to take accountability for that. I should have been much more involved. But we talk about, what safety looks like. And I think that safety isn't what I've learned, which I already knew, which makes it even harder to learn again, is that safety is not making sure that everybody feels good. That's not what real safety looks like. Real safety is when there's very clear expectations, very clear standards, and they're applied to everybody across the board equally. They know exactly what to do every day. They know exactly what's expected of them. That is what safety really is. It's when there's consistent standards and people can live inside of the bowling pins, the pins that you put up, and you're there to kind of bounce them back in to the middle of the lane when they start to get off track. That's what real safety looks like in business, is consistency. It's those thankless conversations that you have, over and over again. It's that it's addressing the thing that's lingering, that you should address, but you're scared it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. It's having hard conversations up front and having them with a level head. And when you do that, your people know what to expect. Every day they know what to expect, and they can put their head down and they can go to work for you. And that is something that we were terrible at. And it feels really heavy because we asked people to be so vulnerable with us during their interview process. You know, like our whole interview process was based on a bunch of things that it was just based on emotion. And my ex-business partner used to always say that we were getting into business with the future version of our employees. And that sounds great on paper, but that makes accountability nearly impossible because you're always allowing things to happen that you shouldn't because, hey, but the future version of them wouldn't do that. And so now I really think that you just gotta, especially in a startup situation where you're asking people to do things that their job is much bigger than it would be somewhere else. They're having conversations that they wouldn't have to have at another job. They're doing more roles than they would have to do at another job. I think you just got to meet people where they are, you know, as far as hiring, especially with your first set of employees. You just got to meet them where they are, and you just got to come together in the way that a professional sports team would come together. So that leads me right into my second point, which is that when you're hiring and when you're running your business, you're not building a family. I made it very clear at the beginning of that business that I did not want a work family because I thought work families were toxic. And I looked up one day and we were like a work family, closer to a cult, really, especially on the sales side. And it was really heavy from the standpoint that, like, I knew at some point when I looked around that we were letting everybody down. These people that we had brought in and made these promises to about who they are as people now and where they want to go as people later, you know, and we based our whole value proposition off of that instead of off of the business and the tasks and the things that we needed them to do. We had let them down as they are and who they wanted to be. And that's just unacceptable. You know, and we didn't apply rules to everybody equally. The rules, when they were applied selectively, and I know there's some ex-employees who feel some type of way about that, and they should. I feel some type of way about that. My feeling is embarrassment. Their feeling is probably anger and betrayal. But yeah, you have to meet people where they are. You have to hold standards. And when you do those things, you know, you're still going to lose people. I actually think that it's best if you lose your first set of employees over time. And that way you get to be in business with people later on who see you only as the boss. And they don't see you as a peer or a friend. And you can still be friends with them, obviously. But I think that's another thing that you should expect is that if you do a really good job, your first set of people are going to take other jobs and other opportunities and take that as a blessing because it gives you an opportunity to level up and to be a real business owner and a real boss and to have people in those roles that only see you that way. You know, I think that's really exciting. And that's something that we didn't do a good job of. As far as who those people are, I think that we learned this the hard way, that it's a lot better to hire one mega talented employee than 2, 3, 4 lower mid-level employees, even though they're cheaper. That top level employee is going to be more efficient. They're going to have better ideas. They're going to move your business forward, and they're going to be more professional. And they're going to be less of a headache. They're going to take less of your time. We just pay the talent. You know what I mean? Go pay the talent. Give them a safe work environment. Treat them like an employee instead of like a family member. And then the ultimate thing that you want to do is give them like a purpose to work towards. So when you're able to keep people safe and they love their job because they get to leave it at the end of the day, then you get to this point where like they can be excited about the business. And that's when your people, and this is what other companies did such a good job of, that we did such a bad job of. They get so excited about the business that they become almost a disciple of your business and they can't stop talking about your business. And they can't, like, everybody they deal with can tell how much they love their job. And that's just a really cool thing that is special. You know, when you have a group of people who are working together towards a common goal and they can't stop talking about it and your employees have turned into disciples, that's where the magic happens. But all that magic can only happen if you do a good job with everything else along the way. And that's what we didn't do. So we did a poor job with our hiring. We didn't hire the right people. We didn't hold people accountable. We didn't give them a safe workspace. We betrayed the trust that they gave us on almost every level. And there's so much more coming out about that. I think that in later podcasts, we'll get into that more. But those are the things that like I learned from watching us fail and watching other companies that were on the launch pad with us take off. You know, they did such a good job with that. They brought people in who were a little bit lost. They were looking for something. They gave them a safe work environment. They mobilized them towards a common goal. And then those people, they did such a good job with their value proposition to them and their clients and their purpose that those people became disciples. And then it was like pouring rocket fuel on a fire. You know, it just couldn't go out. So going forward, those are the things I'm applying. I could have talked about this for hours, but the Building Block series is not about that. It's about the general things that we learned, and they could be right or they could be wrong, but that's what we're applying going forward into the next phase of business. And so that is episode 2. We'll get into a lot more detail later on. We'll get into more stories and juicy details, because when I tell you that we failed spectacularly on all these levels, you literally will not believe some of the stories from this part of our life. Like, you will not believe it. But yeah, we're over the 10 minutes, which I promised to keep these in. So thanks for tuning in today. I hope y'all had a great time. Got any questions? Drop them in the comments. Any comments? Drop them in the comments. You know, like, we're figuring this thing out together. All right, talk to y'all soon.
It's your thing. Do what you wanna do. Just